Hey, I'm Mike Gillette, talking about the problem with positive thinking. The problem with positive thinking. Well, that's kind of a confusing premise right off the bat. I mean, isn't positive thinking a good thing? Well, yes, the idea of thinking positively is a very good thing. The problem is we approach it, or we extol the virtues of positive thinking as though that's a thing that you can start doing. Positive thinking, or the ability to, is not where you start. Positive thinking is an end state. Here's an example. Let's say there's a person who can't do a pull-up, so you want to do them a favor. You're going to teach them how to do a pull-up. So you kind of go through the whole process while you grab the red bar and you pull yourself vertically, and then next thing you know, your chin's up over the top of the bar, and then you lower yourself in a safe, controlled fashion, feet back on the ground, release the bar, boom, that's your pull-up. Well, the problem with that, you're sort of describing how to do a pull-up, it's built on the assumption that this person is strong enough to do a pull-up, and you know that most people who can't do pull-ups aren't strong enough to do pull-ups, which means that no preparatory work was done to suffice to get them to the end state of doing the pull-up. Well, thinking positively on a consistent basis is much the same thing. So instead of telling someone to think positively, what we need to do is encourage others, or yourself, if this applies to you, to start doing the things, to put in the reps necessary to allow yourself over time to eventually have a more positive worldview, a more positive self-image, and then sort of enjoy the benefits that accompany that type of thinking. So let's just say that this is you, and you feel as though you could use some work in that area. So let's do one thing today, which is commit to getting your language under control. Getting your language under control. What I mean by that is, when we communicate with others, we obviously speak, we use words, and when we communicate with ourselves, any sort of self-directed communication, we also use words. We think in words. We don't think in colors or abstract shapes. So anytime that you notice yourself, whether sort of saying it out loud when there's no one else in the room, or just catch yourself thinking things like, I can't do this, I'm so stupid, I'm not talented, whatever type of words come out of your mouth that are not helpful, the first thing you do is you kind of catch yourself, you notice it, and you don't beat yourself up about it, you just notice it. And noticing every time you do that, that's a great first step. That most people just ignore that, and they just sort of let all of those negative statements sort of accrue over time, where they're not doing anyone any good. And there's nothing virtuous about kicking your own butt verbally. Saying bad things about yourself isn't making you self-aware or insightful. It's just getting in your way. So resolve first off to noticing the words that you use to yourself, or in just your thought process. And then anytime you catch yourself saying something like, oh, I can't ever do anything right. Okay. Now let's change that sentence somewhat. Let's turn it around so that it can be more positively phrased. Now, here's what I don't mean by that. Instead of saying, I can't do anything right, I can do everything right. Well, no, you can't. And your brain knows that. And if you say things that your brain understands are not true, there's going to be conflict. It's going to be subconscious conflict. You're not going to notice it, but it's going to become a barrier. It's going to be a thought barrier. So anytime that you create conflict between the conscious and the subconscious mind, we're not really making any progress. All we're doing is lying to ourselves, and we can't lie to ourselves. You can't tell yourself you're super awesome if you don't believe you're super awesome. I mean, that's just going to bounce right off. So understand that there's a better way to do it. So I can't do anything right. Let's change that to something along the lines of, starting today, I'm going to work on doing things better. So I'm giving it sort of a timeline starting today. So it's not just vague. I'm going to get better at stuff. Okay, well, when? It's not going to happen. Okay, so let's anchor it in time, and let's be reasonably specific about what it is that we're going to do. So you catch yourself saying something like, I'm so stupid. Okay, well, let's change that to I recommit to doing things smarter, or to take time to choose the smart way, or to make the smart choice. Frame it in some way that has a positive trajectory, and also so that it sounds like you. Don't make it sound like somebody, teacher, coach, or, Mike Gillette. Make it sound like you, because there will be less, again, internal conflict when your mind is processing those words, and your mind does process everything that you think and say. So start there. Start by catching yourself. Start by noticing. And then any time you notice, then simply reframe, restructure the sentence so that it has a forward point. You anchor it in time, and it has a specific directive attached to it. So if you consistently make the same mistake in math class, say, then come back to that specific thing. I'm going to make a concerted effort to study my algebraic equations more thoroughly, or I'm going to practice, if you're a younger person, my division skills, 10 extra minutes every day. You frame it specifically, anchor it in time, and give it a problem-solving, proactive tone to the message. Try that out. Over time, these are the sorts of baby steps that ultimately lead to habits, and there's all kinds of ways, to get to that point where you can think positively. But start today. Start small, start in a manageable way, but start today, so that you can ultimately think positively. Because thinking positively is a good thing. We just have to start at the right point so that we can arrive correctly at that end point of thinking positively.